This is John Lauder, host of The Cheap Seats. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Strike three, you're out.
Welcome, everybody, on to a brand new show, a brand new episode of that brand new show. You are now officially caught listening on Public House Media. Christian I'm here with you, former host of Press Row, sports editor here at Public House Media. And we got a brand new show here that we're really excited about. This is where you want to come if you're going to talk baseball, and not just the headlines, not just the stuff that's making news, but some of the other fun stuff about the sport that so many of us love and what we call America's pastime. And we're going to do that conversations with a multitude of people, and we're really excited about what we're going to do. You guys can always be involved on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Find us Caught Listening by Public House Media, or email the show caughtlisteningphm@gmail.com. And to get us going on this maiden voyage, a friend of the show from Press Row, we've brought him, onto the diamond now, and off of Press Row onto the diamond. It's Joe Pantorno, sports editor at AM New York. Joe, it's always great to talk to you, buddy.
Christian, thanks so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be on the diamond and to be a part of this pilot.
Yeah, so, well, let's kind of get to it because, again, this show's going to be more than just the headlines, but there are so many in baseball right now, and that's such a trend, and we'll start with Houston and the sign-stealing fiasco, all of that stuff, but they announced earlier this week that Dusty Baker, their manager, and in my humble opinion, Dusty Baker was the right move for the Astros. More importantly, he was the right hire for baseball in general. It seems getting him back into the game is a great thing for this sport.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Number one, I think Dusty absolutely deserves an opportunity to get back into the dugout. He's certainly paid his dues. It's been 22 years now that he's been a manager. And this is by far, well, I won't say by far, but this is one of the most talented teams that he's going to be taking over. Really, the only team that I can think of that's going to rival the 2020 Astros is going to be his 2001, 2002 San Francisco Giants when, he was rolling out Jeff Kent and Barry Bonds and Rich Aurelio. So he certainly deserves this opportunity, and he is the right man for the job because obviously he's had plenty of experience, and he kind of knows how to handle this. And really a team that's in the throes of controversy and is going to be drawing the ire of a majority of the baseball consuming public. This is the perfect hire. He's going to be able to get them through this.
The Astros are going to be probably the most scrutinized team in 2020 for all the reasons that are known. And Dusty, being what he is, being almost kind of a throwback to the old school mentality of managing a baseball club, when you look at him and his ability to obviously put together a great lineup, but then to handle the media and all of those things, he really is kind of the right guy to help Houston through this period of turmoil.
Definitely, and they're going to be knocking down the door of the manager's office every week. So really, it's he's going to be able to separate. Okay, you know what? I'm going to make sure that everything's straight out here in the clubhouse. Mm-hmm. You guys focus on your game, and I will handle the rest.
And that's a beautiful part because it seemed as though, Joe, that there's been such technology and launch angle and exit velocity, spin rate, all these wonderful buzzwords over the last 5-6 years in baseball. And now between the scandal kind of forcing the hand of some of these teams, you're seeing a kind of return back to what baseball and what maybe a lot of baseball purists would love to see. And that is, put your lineup card together, throw those guys out there, and let the best team figure it out.
Right, and it's going to be basically going back to the eye test. And really what this cheating scandal did was almost blur the lines of what is right and wrong in terms of looking at analytics, because you know what? It's still obviously going to be a huge part of the game. Teams over the past 4, 5, 6 months to the past year, to the past 2 years, have been making these managerial hires with analytics in mind. Now all of a sudden, if you bring on a new manager, especially in Houston where all eyes are on you, and you're going to be preaching, okay, well, this guy's going to come in and he's going to, rely heavily on analytics, that's going to raise some eyebrows. like you said, the old school approach might do just enough to save face.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, the Astros are going to retain Joe Espada as their bench coach, and he is pretty darn fluent in it. So he's going to be that blend of new school with Dusty's old school. So
yeah, and especially when you look at the fact that they're looking at there's a Tampa Bay Rays, I guess, VP of baseball analytics or something there for their vacant GM role. The analytics are still a part of this, but there are ways to do it right, so to speak. You know, I mean, don't get us wrong. I mean, and it's so funny. You get to this point in the NFL season, and usually there are players on these Super Bowl contending teams that maybe didn't meet necessarily the standards of the underwear Olympics and in the combine and everything we were looking for, but they passed an eye test or they just fit in somewhere into a mold. And it's about putting a team together based off of personalities and what you see on the field as opposed to what you see on a box score.
Yeah, it's this beautiful reminder that every once in a while common sense can actually prevail, and that maybe your eyes aren't going to deceive you, you know?
Yeah.
And listen, baseball survived for, 175 years, without all of these analytics. I know I exaggerated with the number, but, winners have been built. Dynasties have been built because you have the right man at the helm, whether it's in the general manager's office, whether it's in the dugout as the manager. It's not like you need an overarching reliability on computers and analytics and all that stuff. But then again, I think I'd like to consider myself coming a little bit more from the old school thought of things. But that's just me.
Well, you and me both on that, and we're talking with Joe Pantorno, sports editor at AM New York here, and but when you look at the analytics of it all, Joe, we're 10 days removed from the Hall of Fame announcement, and the two guys going in, Derek Jeter, and we don't have to discuss whether he should have been unanimous or not, but there are people who can legitimately say that Jeter, the metrics weren't there for him defensively, especially in the later portions of his career. And then Larry Walker, a guy who was hit better on the road than at home, yet Coors Field was being taken as a negative for him in his entire Hall of Fame career. So at some point, common sense does prevail, and you look at guys and you just say, yes, he's a major leaguer, he's an all-star, he's a Hall of Famer.
Exactly. And, yes, there's obviously going to be some in-depth numbers that'll come up with some asinine excuse that Derek Jeter wasn't an effective fielder. But you know what? If you think back on Jeter's career, I don't remember him making, that error that cost him the game, or, he didn't have that range that had the single go through for the game-winning run. It's all things like that. You watch, you see Derek Jeter is, in my opinion, second greatest shortstop in Major League Baseball history. He will, and really nothing will change my mind on that. Yes, I do think he should have been unanimous. Granted, I think that there should have been 10 other unanimous Hall of Famers before him. But the same thing with Larry Walker, really, and he, in my opinion, is the testament as to why analytics don't always work, because he was handpicked out of Canada. He really didn't start seriously playing baseball until his late teens. And I actually spoke with him last week at the Hall of Fame press conference in New York City, and he kind of admitted that I learned how to play baseball in the minor leagues.
Yeah, he tells a story about how there was one game in I think it was in Utica, New York, where he rounds second base and it's a pop fly out, and he's told to go back, so he just cuts across the diamond because he doesn't know that you have to go back and touch second. That's just part of So I mean, it's so hard to predict all that stuff.
Yep, exactly. So really, it stresses so much on just having good scouting, good identifiers of talent. It all really comes down to that. And then once these players do get within, the organization's farm system, or when they make that jump to the majors, it's so vital to have that right teaching, to have that resolute support system that's going to really help them flourish. And we saw that with Derek Jeter and with Larry Walker.
Most certainly. One of the things that this cheating scandal with the Astros has kind of overshadowed tremendously is the abundance of moves on the free agent market. It was all about Anthony Rendon and Garrett Cole, and it's kind of sputtered out since then. And you almost forget that Yasmani Grandal signed with the White Sox, that Hyun-Jin Ryu is up in Toronto now with the Blue Jays. But when you look at this free agency market and the guys who have changed locations or the players who have been traded, which one do you think might have some of the bigger impacts coming into spring training here just about 2 weeks away?
I actually think it was one of the more recent moves. I think Nick Castellanos going to the Reds. Really, since the trade deadline last year, they really showed their hand that, hey, we're going to go for it. And yes, we're a smaller market team in actually one of the tougher divisions in baseball. Because you look at the NL Central, the Brewers aren't going anywhere. The Cardinals will always be the Cardinals, and the Cubs are going to be gunning for it too. So you really have a four-headed monster in the NL Central now. With Dick Williams saying, hey, you know what? Hold on. You know, we're going to go for it. And they got Trevor Bauer, and they got Shogo Akiyama, and they got Mike Moustakas. And they added Castellanos. So you know what? It's ready or not. Here we come, and try and keep up NL Central. And I think the Castellanos deal really it bolsters the outfield a lot. It adds another huge bat in the middle of that lineup that's going to join Eugenio Suarez as long as he stays healthy, or depending on how he recovers from his surgery. And yeah, they go from there. But really, they have a great foundation now set up. And hey, it's about time that we get one of these smaller market NL Central traditional teams going for it. I really like it.
One of the old school teams definitely would be a lot of fun to have in there. You know, it's so interesting because some of the changes that have been made, some of the names that have moved around, the National League is going to be so fun to watch because you mentioned the NL Central, but then, even just go out to the NL West real quick and Hyun-Jin Ryu leaving the Dodgers, but obviously they're going to reload, they're going to do everything they possibly can. The Padres potentially in the mix for Mookie Betts here and what that could potentially mean to them. But then you also look at the fact that the Diamondbacks are making moves and getting Starling Marte in the trade, getting Madison Bumgarner to sign there in free agency. Whether he's the same Mad Bum that he was in San Francisco or not, who knows? But the Rockies are right there. The Dodgers will always be there. And then move to the NL East. You have the defending world champs who, oh, by the way, yes, they did lose Anthony Rendon, but they're bringing up one of their top prospects who will likely be there for the entire season. And then you move down the list and you look at the Braves who just added Marcell Ozuna and Cole Hamels, and the Phillies who just added Didi Gregorius and Zach Wheeler, and, oh, by the way, a World Series champion manager in Joe Girardi. And then if the Mets can get their act together, the NL East is going to be really exciting to watch. The National League, to me, is just going back to being what it used to be, the senior circuit leading the way, leading the charge in all of this for Major League Baseball.
Yeah, it's going to be an absolute slugfest, and I really cannot wait for it. The NL West has always been an appealing division for me. Really, the Starling Marte, especially the Starling Marte deal, what the Diamondbacks were able to give up just two, middle-of-the-road prospects to be able to get this guy and stick him in center field. It's a great move for them. Obviously, you have Bumgarner. I really think Arizona is going to revitalize him. Just the notion that, hey, I'm joining a winner. He loves it there. This is one of the greatest big game pitchers, not only of our generation, but of Major League history. So they're gonna go for it. And really, the Rockies, I want to reserve judgment for the time being, depending on how things go with Nolan Arenado. But still, I love the Rockies. They're an offensive powerhouse, and please, somebody get them legitimate pitching, and maybe one day they'll be a force. But the Dodgers are the Dodgers yet. And, shifting to the National League East, I actually think that this has the potential to be probably the best division in baseball, if the Mets get their act together. But I still see the Atlanta Braves owning this division, even though the Nationals are the defending champions. Really, you have that three-headed monster with Freeman and Albies and Acuna. Oh, by the way, let's add Marcell Ozuna. You're picking up Cole Hamels to deal with an already promising pitching staff. I really think that we might be on the precipice of seeing another pseudo Braves. I won't say dynasty, but a dominance over the NL East for a few years.
A lot of Mets fans just had palpitations thinking about a Braves dynasty coming up here like they had in the 90s, of course. We're talking with Joe Pantorno, sports editor at AM New York here on Caught Listening. The National League, for all the tradition that it has been, and the fact that you look at some of those old school teams like the Reds, like the Cardinals, and all of those, and what they've meant, the Cubs, to the history of baseball, it has always been a topic of conversation, especially for the last decade, and it's really picked up over the last couple of years, and even the last couple of days now, with the reports that the designated hitter could be coming to the National League in 2021, as early as 2021. Where are you? Because, I mean, you and I are both somewhat baseball traditionalists here, but at the same time, the designated hitter has become such an impactful part of baseball that it almost seems, ludicrous that it's not universally used.
Yeah, if you presented me this question about 10 years ago, I would have probably scoffed at it and said, no way.
Yeah.
Because I always thought that there was just something special about, the National League having their pitchers bat. It's, it was a traditional institution that has been as old as baseball. And if you're a baseball player, well, you know what? You have to be able to handle both sides of the ball, defensively and offensively. And there's also the strategy that comes with it that I also like. Managers having to decide when to pinch hit, when to go to their bullpen, things like that. But I think I've softened on that view a lot. And I can understand both sides of the argument. Because really, you can just see how much the designated hitter has done for the American League. Basically how it saved the American League in the 70s, coming off the cusp of the pitching dominance that was in the late 60s. And the fact that it's almost been 50 years now that they've had the designated hitter and the National League hasn't been willing to adapt says a lot about it. It's a long overdue move. I think uniformity is important, at least in this aspect, that I think everybody should have the designated hitter. And also you're creating 15 more jobs in the National League. You're going to see, especially for Commissioner Rob Manfred, who has been kind of starving for ways to make the game more appealing, and he's trying to, we're going to use automatic strike zones, we're going to use pitch clocks, we're going to get rid of the lefty specialists.
Yeah.
If you add the DH to the National League and all of a sudden, teams averaging 3 runs per game or averaging 5 runs per game, that's going to do something.
And not to mention, I mean, you talk about adding 15 jobs, but you're probably talking about extending careers too, because what's one of the things we always talk about with a hard-slugging corner outfielder or corner infielder in the National League? Well, you can always go to the American League and become a DH. Now you don't have to worry about that. You're extending careers of certain guys, because we've talked about that for Bryce Harper. At some point, he's going to go to the American League to be a DH. Well, now he doesn't necessarily have to. We did it with Albert Pujols. We did it with, a number of guys that you can go down the list of again, first or third basemen who just slug the crap out of the ball and then all of a sudden go to the American League just to continue swinging it instead of actually having to play the field.
Sure, you're absolutely right. And that'll be, that gives National League teams an opportunity to retain their biggest stars.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely.
So there's really no wrong answer here.
So, Joe, we've loved having you on the show and love talking with you, but with a brand new show comes brand new segments and brand new games that we can probably play. We're going to play a game here that we're excited. It's called Pepper. I mean, you know the old game. We played it in T-ball in high school probably until the signs came up on the fences not to play Pepper. Basically, what we do, this is a way we get our fans and our listeners to be a part of the show. They can submit their questions on social media, Twitter and Instagram, or Facebook by searching Caught Listening by Public House Media. And then you and I just kind of, like Pepper, we just hit it back and forth and see what we can do here with a couple of these questions. You ready?
I love it. Let's do it.
All right, so first one here is coming from Jonathan. When robotic umpires come to Major League Baseball, what do we do? And then in parentheses, I'm scared. So let me ask you that. Robot umpires coming to Major League Baseball.
It would be the greatest move, I think, ever, and it takes accountability away from umpires. And we don't have to deal with Angel Hernandez anymore.
Having worked with it in the Atlantic League, we've been testing it in 2019. The technology's there. That doesn't necessarily mean we need to use it. It definitely needs to be tweaked a little bit, but consistency is key in this sport, and taking away something as what's the word I'm looking for? Trivial as a human error in a strike zone. It shouldn't be human error on that one. So eventually, when the technology's fully there, I'm all in on it.
Here.
Keith, if they can prove that Altuve had some sort of buzzer underneath his jersey, do you think they should suspend him for upcoming season? Because as of now, no players received any punishment.
If if the Astros didn't cut that deal with the Major League Players Association, 100%, I still think that players should be suspended or at least face punishment if it is found that they took part.
For me, how do you you can't suspend an entire organization, but what do you can't force them to give back their World Series rings either, pay back their share of the World Series money that they got. I think what you can do is maybe vacate the title to punish them, and then they can't claim themselves as World Series champions. They can have the rings if they want. They're not worth anything anymore because you didn't actually win it anymore. But if they do prove to have something like that there, you almost have to really look at suspending these guys for a long portion, if not an entire season. Last one here, Mike on Twitter. What are the Red Sox doing waiting and going into spring training without a manager? Okay, I'm going to take this one, Joe, because we've known each other for a while, and you know I'm a diehard Sox fan.
Let's go.
This is the best move they could possibly make, in my opinion. Especially, and what I think it does is I think it's teeing up this idea that Ron Roenicke will eventually become the manager here. In spring training, your bench coach runs everything. The manager isn't really doing much. He's kind of checking in with your superstar who's maybe hurt. Like, for instance, last year it was Dustin Pedroia. This year it's going to be Dustin Pedroia. Your bench coach is handling training camp. What I'm more concerned about is the fact that they're so quiet there in Boston. And Chaim Bloom isn't saying anything about who they're interviewing. But what I see this more so is this is leading it up for Ron Roenicke to become kind of the stopgap to a Jason Varitek, or maybe even going back to some of those old school guys, a Mike Scioscia coming into Boston in 2021. But I think this is the right move for them. There's no need to go crazy, especially when Rob Manfred hasn't released his report on the 2018 Red Sox.
Yes, agree with you almost 100%. Roenicke is absolutely, at least in my opinion, the guy to go for. One name to watch out for, Mark Kotsay, quality controls coach for the Oakland Athletics. He interviewed with the Astros, obviously didn't get the job. He is the kind of person where he would be the perfect kind of guy to come in, and he would be the conduit between Chaim Bloom and the dugout. Young, 44 years old, playing experience, obviously. If it's not Roenicke, wouldn't be surprised if it was Kotsay.
I think it'd be a lot of fun to see that. And again, I honestly think it's just a stopgap because, and another name that pops into my mind, and the only reason it pops into mind, well, two. Number one, Chaim Bloom used to be his boss, and number two, he used to play in Boston, and that is Kevin Cash going in the division and up to Boston in 2021. But I only think Roenicke is just a stopgap for right now, even though he definitely has the chops and he has the respect in that clubhouse more than anything else. Joe, as always, bud, it's great to talk to you, and really happy to have you as a part of the maiden voyage of this brand new show, and we really do appreciate it. Let the folks know how they can find you and all of your wonderful work there with AM New York.
Alrighty, guys, you can follow me on Twitter at Joe Pantorno. Really super simple, no spaces. And that's really it. Don't go finding me on any other social media because that's kind of weird. But in all seriousness, Christian, I want to wish you the best of luck on this show. I know big things are coming your way. And again, really honored that you have me here on the pilot, and wish you all the best.
We appreciate it, pal. Thanks so much.
Alrighty.
Joe Pantorno there joining us on AM New York. Yeah, we're going to have some fun with that. Pepper every single week with our guests. Hopefully you guys can continue to join us and be a part of the show. Don't forget Twitter as @caught_listening without the G at the end. So at @caught_listening, LISTENIN. Find us on Instagram and Facebook as well, Caught Listening PHM, or you can email the show, caughtlisteningphm@gmail.com. Find me on Twitter as well, @Chris Heimel, CHRISHEIMALL. Big thanks to Joe Pantorno. Again, AM New York. Find him on Twitter @Joe Pantorno. And we certainly hope you guys have enjoyed it. We certainly hope you're going to stick around with us, learn a lot, and have some fun with us as we really get into the meat of America's pastime. Until then, I'm Christian Heimel. See you next time. You've been Caught Listening.